Hello, humans of the world.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to Historia.
It's a look at the past.
This is episode 1, and today we're talking about kind of a big deal.
Should I say it?
I think we should.
The Titanic!
Woo! Alright, so we're going to take a look at the Titanic. But first you might be like, what are we doing here? What is this podcast about? Well, let's tell you about it. So I'm Kiley, and Jamie came to my mom's daycare at a young age, and that's how we met, and from there we've just basically grown up together, and now we are here doing a podcast.
Look at us go. How many years later? 20?
Oh, 20, it's been 20 years.
20 years.
I'm not okay with that information. That's a lot to process.
Our 20-year anniversary, here we are.
Let's drink to that.
Let's drink to that. Let's clink
it. All right, you guys heard it here. By the way, if you do not have an alcoholic beverage, maybe grab one and buckle up for this journey.
What am I drinking? I am drinking tropical passion fruit Moscato.
Yes, passion fruit is my favorite fruit. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good wine.
I did not know what passion fruit tasted like until I got the aftertaste of this wine.
I had a Hawaiian friend, and she gave me real passion fruit, and my life was changed. Oh, that's really far away. I'm drinking... Let me grab it. Okay. This is like the fanciest wine I've ever bought. It's Black Diamond Rosé wine. It's probably not that fancy, but it's from the Columbia Valley.
Ooh,
2019.
2019, so old.
Yeah, and this was like $16, which I usually spend like $10, so I was very shocked by that. But it's a rosé. Can't go wrong with a rosé. Rosé all day, baby.
Oh, I do love me a nice rosé.
Yes, goes down like sugar.
Fine wine.
Mm-hmm. By the way, we have 2 dogs, and if you hear them in the background...
We apologize in advance.
Yes, we're trying our best to control them. They are both very young dogs, so they still have a lot of energy. Mm-hmm. So you might hear a bark, a growl, and if you do, it's fine.
They're okay. Yes, they're just playing. They're okay. We are not holding them captive. No.
I promise. They're fine. Don't worry about them.
They're just wild and full of energy. Yes. Because I have a border collie.
And I have a corgi, a little puppy, 3 months old. So she's just living her best life right now. Mm-hmm. Teething, and that's a journey.
Ow, that's a rough part. Just wait until you find the teeth.
Oh.
It's going to be really gross.
Or she just swallows them and you just don't know where they go.
Yeah, but then you, see blood. And then it's, all nasty.
Yeah. I know that's coming soon. I know that's coming within the next month. So, we'll find out what happens with that. But anyway, besides dogs, we are here to create this podcast just talking about history. Mm-hmm. Jamie, why do you like history?
Well, I got my bachelor's degree in it.
That's kind of a big deal.
I am not doing anything with it. I work in the mortgage industry right now, so this is really helping me just kind of share my passion of history, especially stories that they don't necessarily share with you in school, or it's just they kind of sugarcoat it sometimes. So if it gets a little gruesome, just know that's how it was. Mm-hmm. Not history. Sometimes was written by the victors. Sometimes it's just brutal.
Yeah. And we're here to tell the truth. Nothing but the truth.
Or from what we find in our sources. Sources can be very back and forth because the older the history is, the harder it is to find.
Yes.
But we will try to dig deep enough.
Now, as you guys heard, Jamie majored in this. However, I just think it's fun. I'm here for the good time. I like making fun of history. Obviously, there's a lot of things you gotta mourn and take seriously, but there's also just some funny stories that have to do with these big topics. So,
I agree.
Yeah, so you're gonna hear a lot of the serious stuff, but also just a lot of the dumb stuff. And I'm a teacher. I teach 5th grade, so this is my chance to teach history exactly how I want to. And talking to adults about it is very different. So I'm excited to do that.
Yes, I'm excited. I do need to share a story, though.
Okay.
About getting research for this topic on the Titanic. So I like physical books.
Yeah.
For my sources, because that's what I had to use for all of my classes. We had to get a bunch of books. At one point, one semester, I had 17 books that I had to read. It was a lot.
I don't think I've read 17 books in my whole life.
Neither have I. I literally would have to skim through them because I don't have time. I have 5 classes, plus I minored in sociology. So looking at both, like having classes in both of them, it was just a lot. I could not read all of them, but I'm slowly starting to read back into them. Anyway, I'm getting off track. I went to Entertainment, which is like a used video games, movies, books.
Best store ever.
Best store ever if you want cheap stuff. And I went to their book section to look for Titanic books because I love used books. They are my favorite. I think they give them character, and they're cheap. Yep. So I went looking for them, and I decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to scan every single book looking for anything that I can find on the Titanic. I didn't find anything on the Titanic, but I did walk out with a Renaissance book that's like 500 pages, and I ran into this book series that I read in middle school. And I have 4 of the books that I bought from there.
What was it? What's a series?
It's called the Found series by, I think her name's Margaret Haddix.
Okay.
She's great author. She writes phenomenal work. But it's a history type book.
Gotcha.
But I got the first 4. I've only read 3 of them. And then I saw that there was another 4.
What? That you've never read before?
That I've never read, because I was already going into high school by the time that she was publishing more of them, so I just completely forgot about them. But as like an adult, I will read anything. So I bought the rest of the 4.
Incredible.
And so when I got home, I realized I don't have room for them. My bookshelf is completely full with books and puzzles. And I tried to explain that to my boyfriend that I need one, like another bookshelf. And he was like, where are you going to put that? I was like, I don't know. I'll figure it out. Because right now there's just so much junk on it. It's really bad. So instead of getting Titanic books, I ended up getting books that I don't need.
Some middle school books.
Some middle school books.
It's fine.
Yeah.
The only books I buy are for my classroom library. So I also only buy, like, children books.
But, like, you have a reason to.
Yeah. Well, you buy actual books. I don't ever. Sometimes, once in a while, I'll read a real book. But most of the time, I just don't feel like it. Like, if I'm being honest, I've tried to become more of a reader. But I can't. I don't know what it is.
It's hard. You have to find that one book that, like, or genre that you're really into.
Right.
Because I love the nonfiction, like the history books that I read, but some of them are very dry to where you just don't want to read them. I tend to like the ones that have a little bit of structure and, like, a story to them. Not like a friggin' dramatization, like, story, but just, like, this, but, like, in a nice, like, flow, kind of gives it. It's not just so, like, this date, because we all know that we hated remembering dates. Yes. In high school, middle school, whatever, so.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah, that's our podcast. That's basically, what we're going to be doing. And I'm excited. We came up with this idea sitting in a Red Robin. We were like, let's make a podcast. We've been talking about it for a while. Yeah. It's been in the works. We just couldn't really figure out what we wanted to do. But I think we always knew that, like, history would be involved in some way, just because it's fun. So, yeah. And it's Jamie's thing. And I really love history. It's probably one of my favorite things to teach and just learn about. There's so much to learn about, like, because we're not just covering American history. No. I just want to get that right out in the open. There's other stuff that's happened in the world besides American history.
Yeah, I honestly, going to school for just history in general, I did not really take that many classes in U.S. history. Like, I mean, I took, like, maybe 2. I took a Civil War, and then I took early colonial America.
Gotcha.
But everything else was, like, mostly ancient or Latin America. Latin America and ancient Egypt is my favorite, so you'll probably see quite a few, like, topics on those two, like, areas just because I just find them so fascinating. Yeah. Well, there's so much to cover. But, yeah, that's future.
So this is a podcast for everybody. Again, if you're one of those people that's just like, only America, then you won't like this, because we're really going to be talking about the whole world. So, there will be American history.
Yes.
But there's more than that.
Yeah.
So, just wanted to get that out in the open.
Should we dive on in to this lovely story of the Titanic?
Yeah, this is a beautiful story. It's just, my heart will go on.
Oh my God.
We'll talk about the movie later. I'm not getting into it. It will stress me out too much. Stay tuned, because at the end of this podcast, we will both be ranting about this dumb movie. All right, anyway, let's talk about the actual historical events of the Titanic.
Yes, I'm going to get you started with just the structure and bones of the history of the Titanic.
No pun intended. Bones. No. In the water.
That's so... Oh, I like that. But it's sad. Right. Okay. So, just to start out, the Titanic was built by John Pillington and Henry Wilson in 1845. Their business started out just as an Australian gold rush business to really get it booming, have immigrants go over, and they literally just, like, leased out ships. They didn't even own any at the time. And they called this company the White Star Line. This became a very iconic name, especially for if you're a Titanic buff. So the company is named the White Star Line. It started off pretty small, but then it grew in like 20 years pretty big. Like, this company just flourished, and they purchased their first ship called the Iowa. Granted, like, as they were getting successful, they were also getting very rich, so Pillington actually retired, so it was only Henry Wilson who brought on a man called John Cunningham. He joined the team, and they really kind of just threw this business into high gear. They just shifted everything. But as time comes on, and you get old, and you want to retire, that's what happened. So they actually ended up selling in 1867 to a man called T.H. Ismay. He would become very important. He and his son would become very important into the story, just so you know.
What's his name again?
T.H. Ismay.
T.H. Ismay. Ismay?
I think I'm pronouncing it right. Ismay. Ismay?
It's just it sounds like a rapper. Mm-hmm. A little bit.
Probably.
But anyway, continue.
But they had to sell the company to this guy because they lost out on $527,000 to a Liverpool bank.
Oh.
Imagine, I don't even know how much that is compared to, like, pricing now, but even then, that's a lot of money, especially for, like, shipping businesses. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. Like, when I saw that amount, I was just like, oh, shit.
Yeah, compared to what it would be now. Like,
yeah. Oof. And we'll make sure that we post where we got all of our information, just so if you want to do a little bit more digging, because quite a few of my sources I did get from conversations from an actual survivor. He wrote a whole story. His name is, what's his name? Lawrence Beasley. He has a very interesting story. And then the other one was between a senator and the captain of the Carpathia, Arthur H. Rostron. They are very interesting people, and their story, how they describe the event, is really interesting. We'll make sure to put that in the notes. Anyway, so this same year, the company was bought by Ismay as they lost that $527,000, and this guy just like swoops in. He's like, I'll buy your company. I'll take care of it. And he did.
Oh, we love a man who keeps his promises.
Yes, so they expanded pretty much the entire line. So they started adding iron steel ships. Like, they just expanded the industry because they used, before that, they used smaller, but they were faster ships. So they were called clipper ships.
Oh.
So what clipper ships, I had to look this up because I had no idea what a clipper ship was. I don't know anything about ships.
No, I know nothing.
Yeah. So a clipper ship is pretty much just like a cargo ship, but what it's used for, it's very narrow where the bottom is, where like the keel, which means bottom. I looked that up too. And it helps go over the waves a lot smoother, so it gives them more speed. If this information is wrong, I apologize. It's what I found.
Don't come for us.
Do you
know how the internet works? Okay, we shouldn't have to explain it. My dog is currently tangled in the microphone cord.
Oh God!
So,
baby.
Could you move? Could you get your leg out of there? You think? All right. Sorry.
You got her.
One second. Okay. She is good. Also, if you heard a dripping noise, I was pouring more wine. Okay. Anyway.
Okay.
Keep going.
So they added iron ships and steel ships, just so it would add more manpower, add a lot more. It was no longer wood, because steam engines became a thing.
Right.
So this company, over the next few years, just expanded tremendously. Mm-hmm. He has created some of the biggest well-known ships that, honestly, I'm not that familiar with, but if you're like a ship enthusiast, like you're like, oh shit, like I know this, but he created some of the biggest ones that are the Britannic, the Olympic, the Titanic, and then you have the Atlantic, rest in peace because that ship did go down, and the Oceanic. So these ships were big. The Britannic, the Olympic, and the Titanic were the biggest of his ships. The Titanic hold the record for being the largest. Up until, I think, a few years ago, a cruise line took the title.
Yeah, I saw that as well, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the Titanic was so big. It was ginormous. But the Britannic, the Olympic, its sister ship was only 3 inches smaller than it.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I can't imagine.
3 inches is a lot.
Oh, 3 inches is a lot. But so these ships were very big, and it brought the cargo industry a lot. All right. So as the White Star Line grew bigger, there was a tragedy. Mm-mm. There was a big tragedy. T.H. Ismay died in 1899.
No!
Yes!
I was really rooting for him.
Oh, yes. Well, he died.
We all were rooting for T.H. T.H.? Is that his name?
Yeah.
T.H. What does it stand for? Did you find out?
I did.
Theodore? Let me guess. Theodore Henry.
I think it was.
No way.
I don't know. I'm going to have to look it up.
It was.
I have to look it up.
There's no way. There's no way. Okay, I'll look it up while you talk.
Yes, please do. I looked this up too, but there's just so much going through my brain. Anyway, so his son took the company. He pretty much inherited the company, and his name was Joseph Bruce Ismay. This guy was quite interesting. He was the one who took charge of the Titanic. He was the one who launched the campaign for it. So the Titanic, so now we're getting into the actual ship itself. The Titanic was signed in construction on April 30th, 1907. Now, this ship took sail in 1912. That's not a lot of time. What was his name?
Real quick, I was very close, guys. It's Thomas Henry. I said Theodore Henry, so I got the middle one right.
Well, Theodore is such an 1800s
right,
name.
That's why I really thought I was right there. But Thomas, Theodore,
Thomas.
They're similar.
Gotta love Thomas.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will stop trying to figure out people's names.
So his son, Joseph, took control of the company, and he is the one who created Titanic. So yes, it was constructed April 30th, 1907, but the construction started around that time in Belfast, Ireland, at the Harland and Wolff shipyard. This only took, from 1907 to 1912, so about 5 years?
Yeah, yep.
That's not a long time to build a ginormous ship.
Fast.
That is quite fast, but then again, I don't know how fast ships...
Maybe that's not fast, but at that time, I feel like it would have had to be. Like, maybe not now.
They had to have had so many people.
Yeah.
But, so the keel, though, the bottom of the ship was laid out 2 years later, so they completed that part, the bottom of it, the black part that you see if you just look up a picture of the Titanic. That black part, that's the keel. So that was completed March 31st, 1909. About 3 years later, the launch date of the Titanic was May 31st, 1911. So that was just pretty much like, oh, the ship is getting done. It's getting ready to set sail. Like, be prepared.
What year?
1911.
Okay.
Yeah, so it would still be like another year, almost like a little under a year. So it successfully passed all of its trials, even though how massive it was. Do you want to know how big this ship was?
Yes, let's hear it.
So I did a little bit of math today, more so just a Google research because I am awful at math. So the Titanic in length, for how long it is about 3 football fields.
Wow.
A little under. So it was about 883 feet long. That's a big-ass ship.
Wow.
It was about 92 and a half feet broad, so it was wide. So it was very wide, too. And from keel to where the deck was, it was about 104 feet tall.
Oh.
It was very, very tall.
When we say it's big, we're not joking.
No, it was the biggest at one point. She was a beast. So she was made from steel, so she has some serious strength for the time. Like, they called as what Lawrence Beasley, what I saw in it, he stated that this ship was the unsinkable lifeboat. That's an iconic thing. And
yeah, in multiple sources, it's known as being unsinkable. That was like its big thing.
Yeah,
like that was the big title it was given.
I feel like they would say that for every single ship. Like,
right,
every single new one.
You don't want to be like, by the way, this ship might sink, right? So, like, you're not gonna get people to go on if you're like,
it might sink. Like, who knows?
So you have to say unsinkable. Like, I get it, but it's just so ironic.
It really is. But this ship was literally a beast. It had 29 large boilers and 159 furnaces just to keep this baby going. Oof. Yeah, and it had a reciprocating engine with Parsons low pressure turbine engine. I'm guessing those were pretty high-tech engines for the time, and it added on speed. It gave way of a little bit more weight, and it really, really focused on passenger cargo accommodation, so it could fit over 2,000 people. And that's what they wanted, because they wanted people on their ship and also kind of pass through just cargo and stuff. Like, it was a beautiful ship. If you look up pictures of it, it was classy. Gorgeous. Yeah. Even, I guess, if you look at the movie, it's still classy. Or you can go just to the museum in Tennessee, which is the weirdest place to have a museum.
Yeah, I want to go.
I do, too. I think it'd be very cool.
Yes.
It'd be a lot of fun. But the funny thing, too, about the Titanic, though, is that she was so big that she barely made the limit for every port that she went to, which was very minimal because she didn't last that long. But she barely made the limit because she was just too big.
She was just large and in charge.
She was large and in charge, and she had so much. She had so much going for her.
Yeah, so much.
So now I'm going into leading up to the accident. There's a lot to this. Pretty much just. Because you always think of, like, oh, what went wrong? But it was more so of just, like, what was going on. So, leading up to the first sail of the Titanic, the crew was hired April 6th. That is not a lot of time to really train people for certain situations. But then again, it's like you're hiring mass.
Because when did it take off?
It took off on April 10th.
Yeah, so 4 days?
4 days.
Excuse me? I'd be like, I need more training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, I need something. 4 days?
Mm-hmm. So it left on April 10th to Cherbourg. So it left from Ireland, I believe, in Liverpool to France, and it picked up passengers. And then it went to Queensland the following day, and then it was going off to New York. So it was going towards New York on the 11th. They were at sea for quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't just like, boom.
Let's just go.
Yeah.
They were pretty deep out there.
Yeah, they were really far out there. Mm-hmm. And April's pretty chilly, especially early April. So it's just getting out of winter into early spring. So there was a lot of that could go wrong, but also they were pretty confident about where they were going to go and how they were going to do it, like which route they were going to take. Mm-hmm. So they kept picking up passengers along the way. So when it went to Cherbourg and Queensland, they just kept picking up more people. And from one of the accounts that I got from the Lawrence Beasley and then from the captain and another source that I got it from, there was about 338 first class, which are the elite people, the rich, the wealthy, the rose.
The bougie.
The bougie people.
Bougie people that can afford everything.
Mm-hmm. And the ones who got saved first, other than the children and women.
Yeah.
And then you had 279 second class. They were the more middle class, the more like social class, kind of just there to do their thing.
Right.
And then the third class, there were 712 of them. Mm. And a lot of them were immigrants wanting to go to America.
Do you know how many of those survived?
I do.
I know they don't have the exact number, like they're not positive, but
mm-hmm.
what did you find?
I found that, well, it doesn't say how many of just third class. I have just like passengers that drowned were 815.
Okay.
So I'll get to the more gruesome.
Yeah. Sorry. I got excited.
I don't blame you. I get excited too. But I think the most confusion that I got between how many people were also on the ship, there was well over 2,000. Mm-hmm. But it varied for crew members. There was about 860 to 908. So a lot of them died. The captain didn't make it. Mm-hmm. So this includes like stewards, cooks, engineers, navigators, and you already know that engineers. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Those engineers were not going to make it because they were in the bottom, and that's what got hit. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And they had... So the normal amount of lifeboats that were regulated for ships at that time were about only 20. They could have fit a lot more, but they chose not to because they had bathhouses, gymnasiums, dining halls. They had everything, just like a regular cruise line, but like 1900 style, like early 1900s. Yeah. But they chose not to. I also saw, too, that there was only 16, but I'm pretty sure there were a steady 20 lifeboats. But when you're trying to fit that many people, you're not going to fit them all in 20 ships, even though they were like 30 feet long. Yeah,
I also heard like kind of what you were explaining, but I heard that like they didn't want it to block the view. So, like, they really kept the lifeboats hidden, and they wanted as much room as they could to make it look good. So, part of the reason why they didn't have as many lifeboats is because they just wanted it to look good and feel fancier.
Like, I get that, but yeah, that's so messed up. Like, honestly, I would rather look at a lifeboat knowing that thing could save my life. Because when I've been on a cruise, we went to the Bahamas when I was, like, in middle school, and there was, like, a track that you can walk, like, run around, and we would walk it, and you would see, like, the lifeboats, and I'm like, even at that age, I was still like, okay, I'm pinpointing of where these are just in case, because you never know, because you see, like, every now and then, like, oh, this cruise line sunk, and it's just, like, it's not as bad because it's, like, right off, I think there was one right off the coast, like, a few years ago, but it's just, that's the one thing that I always want to pinpoint when I get on a ship is, like, where's the lifeboats, but they wanted to keep them hidden, which is just, like, Really?
And it's similar to, like, Disneyland. Like, you have to decide, do you want it to look scary, or do you want it to look pleasing? And I think that was the big choice, because if they had lifeboats everywhere, you'd be kind of scared. Although it would be a smart decision. Like, it wouldn't make you want to stay there. So I get their decision. It's just interesting.
Yeah, for sure. And looking into that, I was just like, man, they could have fit a lot more. But it's just at that point, people who are stuck in the bottom, especially the third class, they were stuck at the very bottom of the ship. Like, a lot of the rooms were. So, like, they were going to have a harder time, because it was also in the middle of the night. As I get into my next point, a distress call
Dun, dun, dun.
dun, 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 at 12:35 a.m.
Ah, best time of the night.
So early. The RMS Carpathia got a distress call from the Titanic stating that they were in trouble, that their ship was sinking, and reported their coordinates. This really hesitated everybody. It was very just like, is this for real? And the wireless operator was just like, are you sure? And then the operator was just like, we're sinking. And so he ran to...
He's like, yeah, I'm sure. Can you help me?
Yeah, right? Like, I would be freaking out too. So
don't ask questions. If I need help, help me.
Yeah, and then all signal was lost. Like, they were trying to get back in contact, like, are you okay? What's going on? And it just went quiet. And so they ran back to the operator, took the paper, printed it out, was like, I gotta run this to the captain, because the captain was already in bed, because, it's 12:35 a.m. And they were 58 miles away from the Titanic.
Oh.
That's a long time for, like, a ship like theirs. So leading up to just the accident, the Titanic, the weather was absolutely fine. But the route that they went through was just infested with icebergs. They would get to, like, 12, 13, 100 feet tall, and then they would get really small, too.
Oof.
And if you know icebergs, they may look small on top, but they're massive on bottom. And so they're trying, like, imagine trying to swerve out of a freaking bunch of icebergs in your 883 long boat.
Yeah.
You don't have the best navigation for that.
Right.
So, and the iceberg that they hit got them right in the keel, the bottom of the ship. And that was a weak spot for it. Because it was so high. Yeah. There's not a lot to protect it.
Right, and I know they saw the iceberg coming, but they couldn't swerve out of the way. Like, that's how big it was. It was like they weren't able to get out of the way quick enough. So obviously it's going to hit it. It's gigantic. Yeah, even a ship that big, you can't. It would take you a while just to swerve out of it. Like, maybe your little speedboat can, but, like, a giant ship like that, there was no way that they were going to get out of the way. Right. And a lot of times, like, it was hard. Like, you have people in the crow's nest looking out, and then other navigators, but they can come out of nowhere. Like, they're just popping up, like, here I am. I'm gonna hit you. I'm coming. Watch out. So, yes, the Titanic hits at 11:40 p.m. on the 14th. And it took about 2 hours to sink. It was not a quick sinking. Like, a lot, when you think of, like, the Titanic, you think of just, like, woo, like, almost right away. But this ship was so massive, it went down slow. So if you were aboard that, like, if you're in the bottom, that's gruesome. That is just gruesome. I'd rather it happen fast. Like, I'd rather know, like, okay, this is happening, we're going down, instead of, like, oh, we're getting closer and closer, it's about to hit our side. Like, no, I'd rather it happen fast, And then it was freezing temperatures, too. Yeah. And I believe how deep it was about 13,000 feet. So, that is super deep, freezing cold waters. You don't know if it's shark infested. Yeah. It's a bad time.
And then you only have so many lifeboats as you're watching these people in lifeboats staying somewhat warm, kind of. Mm-hmm. And you're just there.
Yep.
Dying.
Right.
Of hypothermia.
Freezing to death.
Yeah, it's awful. I'm sorry.
We're not going to apologize for these are real facts.
Yeah, it's
you don't apologize for history.
It's rough, but their coordinates, I looked it up. I didn't know what the little dash meant, because I did not do well in my geography course. But their latitude was 41 degrees, 46 miles north, and their longitude was 50 degrees, 14 miles west. As I was saying, the Carpathia was 58 miles away. So it took them full speed.
Yeah.
3.5 hours. So the boat was long sunk by then. So they were just trying to save as many people as they could. Mm. But so Captain Arthur H. Rostron, he was asleep, and he was awoken to this news of the Titanic being like in a distress call. And he, of course, was just like, is this real? Because we're not going to go off path, because they were going to Gibraltar from New York.
Yeah.
And you're not just going to go off course because someone like prank called you in the 1900s.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But no, the operator was like, I'm dead serious. Like, the Titanic is sinking. The unsinkable lifeboat is sinking. Mm-hmm. And so Captain Arthur Rostron decided, we got to go there. We got to turn the ship around. We got to go those 58 miles, put on full speed. Let's go. And this ship started to go. He was a great captain for that situation. Like, he got everything under control. I do want to add a little bit of information about the Carpathia, because
I'm curious.
I was quite interested, because I had never heard of that. Because before today, or before like we studied the Titanic, I didn't know anyone helped them. I
didn't either, to be honest.
They never taught us that.
Yeah.
We just learned about Molly Brown.
They probably deserve more credit than they're given, so let's give them the credit,
Let's give them credit. So they were a passenger refrigerated cargo ship, established, completed in 1903. This ship was tremendously smaller than the Titanic. It was 540 by 64.5 by 37.4 feet.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lot smaller. But it also was quite fast. And I do have to admit how great this ship was. It did get sunk in World War I. Oh. Or it was like at the end of World War I. It was after. But
okay.
It was in...
I had a good amount of time to it.
Yeah, it was in 1918 when it was sunk.
Okay.
It was June 17th.
Did you memorize that date?
No, I have it written down.
Oh, it looked like you were like, I know the date.
Well, yeah, I did, because I wrote it down. So I actually am not that bad with dates. I try to remember them. Like, if you ask me, like, a Disney movie, most of them I can give you, like, a set year date.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But anyway, the Carpathia was torpedoed by a German U-55 U-boat, which is really sad, because it had... It killed a bunch of people.
Oh, wow.
I know. So I'm like, freaking wars. We'll probably be covering World War I at one point. So the Carpathia was a really huge contributor to the Titanic, and it has its history, too. And there is a great surprise, though, for the end. It's kind of ironic. I'm not going to say it now, because it'll give you incentive.
Oh, my goodness.
But, so... The Titanic slowly slunk until 2:20 a.m. They did not get there until like 3:45 a.m. So it was like almost a whole hour until they arrived. And so these people were just freezing to death.
So they were swimming in the water at that point, like nobody was, because the ship was down.
Mm-hmm. The ship was already down. And so everybody was like freaking out, because what do you do in that situation? Like, do you think someone's coming for you? Probably not. I would have freaking lost my shit.
Yeah.
And just been like, I'm going to die here.
Yep, same.
I guess. I guess that's just how it's going to be.
I just accepted my fate and been like, all right, I'm going to freeze to death. Goodbye, world.
Goodbye, world.
This is the end.
So the official date of the sinking of the Titanic was April 15th, 1912. It started the 14th, went into the 15th, so technically it was 2 days that it took to sink, even though it was only a couple hours. But, so yeah, the Carpathia went off full speed to get there. 58 miles they had to go. Freaking crazy. So along the way, as they were heading towards the Titanic, Rostron had all of his crew get ready for the survivors. Like, he made sure that his ship was prepared, because they also had people aboard. So you gotta set, like, okay, so I have my people, but I also have these people on the Titanic.
Yeah, like I gotta take care of mine, but I'm also... Did they mention... I don't know if you already said it, but did they mention how many people were on that one?
No, I can't... I tried to look into it.
Okay.
But there were quite a bit of people, because I think it didn't fit as much as the Titanic, for sure. But it still had a fair amount of people, and of course they were very curious. They actually tried to do it kind of like hush-hush to, like, not scare the other people. Like, they were aware of what was going on, but they didn't want them seeing the bodies.
Gotcha.
So they used the dining halls to gather gear, like blankets, any, like, medical kit that they can use, like medicals. They got food for them because they were probably really hungry, very thirsty, because you can't drink ocean water.
No.
You'll die of dehydration.
I would not recommend that.
Yeah. But they did have coffee, though, for the workers, because they were going to be up all night trying to tend to these people. And I'm sure a lot of them had, like, wounds, gashes, just from, like, probably jumping off or just, like, ramming into when they hit. So it's like they didn't really know what they were going to see when they got there.
Right.
They also took very, very extreme precaution when heading towards the Titanic, because they knew that they saw all of the icebergs and they're like, oh shit, like this is what happened. Like, this is gruesome. Yeah. And it just... They pretty much just started hauling people from the lifeboats, from the water. They just kept pulling up people, and they got, like, the women and children. And what I read in the conversation that Rostron had with the senator was that they weren't freaking out to get up onto his ship. They were actually being very pleasant, going up, like, one at a time. Like, I'm sure they wanted to just as fast as they could, but they knew that could lead to even worse consequences. Like, they could fall in the water.
Yeah, you have to be careful, even though it's terrifying.
I think they were just so happy to get the help. Yeah. Because you don't know if you're getting help or not. Like, was the distress call, did it go through? Okay. So... now I'm getting to the really gruesome part, the death toll.
If you have children around, tell them to go away. Because this is, unless they're old enough to handle it.
I mean, it's not like, I'm not going to tell, like, how bloody and just, like, gruesome, like, oh, this dude was missing an arm.
These are just
not yet.
These are the real facts.
Yeah. There probably will be other histories, though, that will be
don't let your children listen to this. This isn't a we're here to educate your children thing. This is a we're here to talk about history.
I mean, you can, but
that we're educating them, but in a different way.
Yeah, because we're drinking wine, but we're legal.
I swear, we'll show you our IDs.
Anyway, so 815 passengers drowned.
Yeah,
that's a lot of passengers. 688 crew members drowned. So that was probably most of the engineers and a lot of other people. It's so sad. That's a lot of people. Just in all the bodies, too. Because they were probably floating up every now and then. Because they just had ships going back and forth just to look. And over time, like months or something, they would just have a body pop up in, like, the next year or two, and they'd be like, oh, that's a passenger from the Titanic, and they just washed up. And so they would pick them up, but were 333 bodies that were found at sea. So just like randomly they found them.
Right away or like after?
I think progressively over time. Okay. Yeah. So because they were probably getting loose from the ship like breaking or just whatnot.
Yeah.
But 328 were picked up by Canadian ships. So one of the Canadian ships that picked up the most was the Mackay Bennett. It picked up 306 bodies. 116 were buried at sea. So they pretty much got them, described them, kind of like, oh, blonde hair, blue eyes, died of drowning, and then they would give them a sea burial, which is like, that's cool. I would love to have a Viking burial, like, awesome.
Yeah.
But like at sea, it's just like, oh, your family members, like, I wonder how they would react. But some of them probably they couldn't really give any like ID information, right? Because they didn't really have that. But 190 of the bodies were taken into port up in Halifax, and they took all of those bodies to a curling rink.
Oh.
Yeah, because it's cold, and they could really kind of identify the people. And I was reading, too, in some of my sources, they had like descriptions of the people, what they were wearing, what they had on them. So there was just pages and pages of victims of the Titanic that died, and just like they didn't really know who they were, but they had a description of who. Mm-hmm. And most people, like, they could be like, oh yeah, my sister was on the Titanic. They didn't come home.
Because they knew that they were going.
So that's pretty much how they could get like their information too. It's just
there's those people who like didn't have family, or like nobody knew that they went on the Titanic.
A lot of the immigrants.
Yeah, which I get because like, it's hard to communicate. Like,
yeah, well,
nowadays you could just be like, going on the Titanic, hashtag can't wait.
Aren't they making a second one?
I think so. I saw that. I feel like I saw that a couple years ago, but I don't know if it ever happened.
Well,
they're ever going to make it happen.
Well, it's going to take forever if they're going to try to. Cause
yeah.
Right. I would go on it.
Yeah, I would too.
Little daredevil me.
Yeah.
Dude.
Let's go. Let's go.
I would definitely dress up as like in 1900s.
Oh yeah, we're going to act like it's back in
I got to learn all the slang.
Yes.
Just watch Titanic 1,500 times.
Oh geez. I refuse. That's a lot of hours.
I mean, you probably would watch like the movie maybe like not even 100 times because it's so freaking long.
I couldn't ever watch it even more than 3 times.
I think I only got through it all the way once.
Same. And it took me a week.
Oh my god.
Because I can't sit still, and 3 hours is a lot. Anyway, as I mentioned, movies coming later. We'll talk about it later.
So, you have the Mackay Bennett who picked up a majority of the bodies. And then you had the CGS, which is the Canadian government ship, Montmagny. Magny. They picked up 4 bodies, and then the SS Algerine picked up 1 body. But the Carpathia, they saved around 700 passengers.
Wow.
Which that's not bad. But they arrived to New York around April 18th. So it was just a few days later. So those people really had to, for about 3 days, they really had to process like what just happened. Like if they lost any loved ones,
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of them lost like the males in their lives, obviously, because it was women and children, you know.
So, and especially around that time too, like it was hard for a woman to really survive on her own.
Right.
Unless you were like super wealthy.
It was very rare.
Yeah. So the following year, Joseph retired. Because he just kept getting bombarded by the media. You can imagine just like, well, what is your opinion about the Titanic sinking? Yeah. Like, da-da-da. Like, just getting so much harassment of your ship that you deemed unsinkable sank not even a month into its first sail.
Yeah.
It's wild. Like, it's such an iconic ship. but it wasn't around for very long.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how that is, but that's how history is. We tend to grasp onto the most iconic things.
Yeah.
But, so for the next, like, about 30 years or so, up until 1934, the star line was just kind of going back and forth. It did fairly well, but it finally merged with the Cunard sailing line, which was also the line that the Carpathia was on.
Ah!
Yeah, so
wow.
they merged into the Cunard White Star Line.
Okay.
So, and it pretty much kept up with that until like around the 1950s. So the Titanic, though, it's really iconic for how short it sailed. But
yeah. And how much hope they had for it too.
They
calling
really
it unsinkable. Like obviously we've talked about that, but like I feel like they had so much
hope,
and they just thought it'd go so far, it'd last forever.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
But it didn't, and that it just happens sometimes. It's just the route they went on. It was just bad timing, wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah,
and trying to maneuver around it in that big of a ship was just not going to happen. And so everybody was aware that like they were doing everything that they could, but it just didn't go the way that they planned, and that's life. So, you're going to tell me some stories?
So yeah, I'm really going to touch on the survivors because I think a lot of the stories are very interesting, especially just being in this situation and just thinking like, I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them, you know, they ended up surviving and they had stories to tell for years to come.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see something about how they like had a drill a couple days before, but then it was canceled?
No.
Yeah, so they like had a safety drill that they were planning on doing, but they felt like they weren't prepared to do the safety drill because they had more stuff to get taken care of before.
Oh my god.
So and I think it's because what you were talking about where like they had to get trained in like 4 days, right?
Yeah,
and get going. So they had a drill. It was a safety drill where they were supposed to like practice evacuating the boat, etc. And it was canceled. So that was I thought that detail was just like, oh, it's one of those things like, oh, if only we did it.
Oh my god.
But yeah, there's a big story about a band, and this is debatable. Some people think the band is real. Some people think maybe not so much. But they have found instruments.
Yeah.
So,
well, there had to have been a band on the ship,
right, to entertain, and that was a big thing back then. So the big thing about this band, and you see it in the movie. Okay, I know I'm not trying to like talk about the movie, but it is in there. These details that people have thought they knew, where even survivors have talked about it. But there was a band that played until the last second. Like, they stood there, and they played music until it was fully sunk, to bring peace of mind to everybody that was there. So, I really love that. So, again, we don't know if that is 100% accurate. I know there was a band, but I don't know if they actually played till the last second. Because I feel like they'd be like, I don't know, let's get to safety.
History is always exaggerated that way.
Exactly.
It's like a game of telephone.
Right. So that would be beautiful. I hope it's real. Yeah. That's a great moment. But that is one theory that people have. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some survival stories. Now, should I save the best for last?
Heck yeah.
Okay, I'm going to save the best for last. Not that, like, none of these people are great, too. But there's just one story that's just amazing.
Iconic.
So, let's talk about one girl. Her name was Eva Hart. Eva Hart was 7 years old. Her father died, and her mother and her survived. Now, this is the crazy part. Her mom walked onto the ship and instantly told her husband that she had a horrible feeling. Ooh. Like, she felt this weird, like, sense, I guess, in a way. Like, intuition that they should not be on the ship.
Ooh.
Yeah. So she actually sat there before they got on the ship. She begged her husband not to get on.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah. And of course he ended up passing away. But here's the interesting part. She was one of the last awake. So she was wide awake at 12:30 when all of this was starting to happen.
The 7-year-old was.
No, sorry.
Oh.
Her mom.
Okay. I was just like, what?
Yeah, no, I think Eva was asleep. But her mom was awake, and so they were actually one of the first on the lifeboats because they had that big warning.
Were they first class or second?
I believe they were first class. I didn't get that information, but I believe that. So they ended up getting on a lifeboat, except for the mom was separated from Eva. So they were actually separated, so they didn't know if they were surviving. But Eva was 7 years old, and she remembers seeing the iceberg. So she remembers like seeing it all happening and thinking that she was going to die. But they both survived. Their dad gone. Okay. Again, it was so big. They were literally screaming, women, children first. So they knew the men had to wait. So, like, it was a very small chance that they'd ever see him again, and they kind of accepted that. But I just thought that story was interesting because of the feeling that her mom had.
Yeah.
And obviously they found each other at the end of everything happening, probably even a couple days later. But they got separated and ended up back together, which is interesting. Another big one was Molly Brown. I know this one's a huge one.
We both did projects in elementary school on her.
We did. I dressed up like her. I don't know if you did.
No, we just had to write a paper, and I was in 3rd grade not knowing how to do research.
Cool. I did like a whole project, and so I had to dress up like her and act like her. Anyway, so her husband was rich. Obviously, you got to get the money from the, someone, right? He was into mining. So, of course, big, what am I trying to say? Big source of money at that time.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, she was known for, like, her big flashy hats, right? She'd have the huge hats that were super nice. But she also just had a very charming personality, and that's why people were attracted to her. She was, like, the star that lit up the room, the life of the party, etc. So people found her very charming. Something super cool about her, and especially during this time, because not many people were doing it, but she, like, gave back to others. And she was constantly advocating for rights of women.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, so especially, like, in this time, like, are you kidding? That's amazing. You're ahead of the time, girl.
Well, yeah, because I don't think women could vote yet.
Right.
I think it was, like, 1919.
So, like, she can't even vote. She's also advocating for children, and one of her main focuses was education. So, she saw how important it was, etc. So she was known for those reasons. I'm just advocating for other people. And that didn't change when she's on the boat, okay? Or on the ship, not boat. I shouldn't say boat. It's a ship. It's different. It's different. When she was in her lifeboat, she literally said that they needed to turn around and try to save other people. So she, even before she was on the lifeboat, she was helping other people on before herself.
Yeah.
So she was a big name, right? She's rich. She could have gotten on right away and been fine, but she made the decision to help people get on, and she even steered her own lifeboat. What a queen. We love her.
Yes.
So then she's on her lifeboat, and she's basically arguing with everyone to turn around, and at this point, the ship had sunk, but she's saying, like, let's turn back. I know there's just the debris there left, but we can find more survivors. And she's telling the quartermaster this, and she even threatened to throw him off the boat. Hardcore respect. She was like, if we don't turn around right now, I'm throwing you off.
Imagine her, like, yelling at this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And her big fancy hat.
Yeah, she's
and her
like, I guarantee,
dress.
no matter what the truth is, I guarantee she was wearing a hat at this time. She had to have brought it to the lifeboat. She had to have brought it. So she threatened to throw him off. She's literally like, we got to turn around. Nobody actually knows if it returned or not, which is interesting. But that was a big story that was going around. And another cool thing about her, she's literally amazing. When they got rescued, she used knowledge of foreign language. So, like, there were people on her lifeboat that didn't speak her language, and she knew other languages. I didn't write down specifically what languages she knew, but she was able to communicate and even, like, console others, like, help them feel better.
Yeah, because they went from Liverpool, they went to France.
Right. There's people all over the world.
Yeah. So.
And then, this is my favorite thing about her. I always think, like, this is my favorite thing about her, but this actually is. I love this thing. So, after the sinking of the Titanic and once people got back home, etc., they're obviously, the ones who were first class, and especially if they lost their husbands, their fathers, they're not doing too well. So she actually railed those first class passengers to donate to the ones below them. So basically, like, asking people who were super rich for money to help donate to these women who lost everything, like, literally everything. And she, because of her, like, determination, she raised over $10,000, which, again, like,
that's
thinking of
lot
it, especially
for the
nowadays,
time.
like, whoa!
Yeah.
I don't even know how much that would be, but that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Okay. So that was Molly Brown.
Iconic.
We love her.
We love
her. She's amazing. I'm so glad I did a project about her. But I don't remember.
Did you wear a funky hat?
I did.
Oh my gosh, I want to see a picture. Your mom had
I
to
have a
taken
picture. I have a picture. I'm like,
you have to show me.
I will find it at some point.
It's probably printed out because it's so old.
It was awkward. It was like a history fair type thing.
Okay.
Like, everyone did a board.
I think I remember this because I was still going to your mom's daycare at the time, and I remember you were planning this project.
Yeah.
And I know that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing one too.
Right, yeah. And I was the only one dressed up in character.
Oh.
Which is fair. I'm a theater kid, so it worked. But everybody else was just, like, in their normal clothes, and I come in with this big hat and gloves. Like, I was so ready to be in character. Wasn't necessary. There was no reason to be, but I still was. I was ready.
Did you get an A? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I hope so. After all that effort, are you joking?
Right.
We also had to do this thing where we had to freeze until somebody hit the button. So people would come up and hit the button, and then you become that character. So you're, like, alive.
That's probably where, because you went to an elementary school that was very theater-based, so that makes sense.
Yeah. If I didn't go to that school, I don't know if I'd be where I am today.
Yeah, I remember going to your plays in elementary school. Supportive best friend I am.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, those are the best. Okay, anyway, that was Molly Brown. Just a feminist icon at the time, especially, like, there weren't many leaders like that at the time, so I'm glad she existed. I'm glad she survived. Here's another guy. I can't say this one survived, but this was Captain Edward John Smith. Okay? Many people... I know, right? John Smith, okay. Many people blamed him, but he was honestly just listening to what he was told. Okay, so he was following the code, apparently, to what they were told to do. And honestly, in the guidelines, they were told that ice wasn't harmful. Which is kind of like, but think about it, right? Like, you're hitting an iceberg.
It's hard.
I think they probably meant ice, but not an iceberg. That's different. So they didn't think ice would be harmful. And nobody actually knows what happened to him. Some said that he helped other people, but some say that he froze in panic, which, like, same, right? Like, just stand there, but, like a sim, right? But nobody actually knows what happened to him. But this is his last quote, pretty simple. He said, "Well, boys, do your best for the women and children, and look out for yourselves." So that's kind of what caused everybody to focus on the women and children.
Yeah.
Which was such a big thing at that time. So, okay. This one, I only have a couple more. This one was Milvina Dean. I hope I'm saying her name right. I love her. She was a last survivor. Like the last one to live. If that makes sense. Because she didn't die till 2009.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So here's why. She was 7 months old when she was on the ship.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Sorry. She was 2 months old.
Oh my god.
I said 7 months old, but I heard 2 months. I think it's 2 months. She was on the ship with herself, obviously. I don't know why I wrote that. Her mom and her brother. And some of the first third-class passengers to aboard a lifeboat. So they were actually third class and they were first to aboard.
I was wondering if they were immigrants because there was no husband, so I'm guessing they're probably going to America.
They had a dad, but he died. I forgot to mention. They were on there with him.
Oh.
So he
never mind, I retract that.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't write and dad, but I know she was with her mom, brother, and dad. But I know her mom, her brother, and her were the only ones to survive. So,
that's so sad.
Again, another cause. Dad's dead, right? I wrote goodbye, Dad, because that's hard.
Goodbye, Dad.
But I just thought that was cool because she was 2 months old and she was able to, like, tell her story Obviously, she doesn't, like, remember it.
She probably hears it from her mother and her brother.
Yeah.
The stories.
Exactly. But again, she was the last living survivor. So she died, what is that? 12 years ago?
God, and imagine, too, like, the mother, like, just the postpartum. She probably 2 months after. Like, my God, what a trooper.
I know. Queen. Okay. I really thought I researched more people than this, but apparently I didn't. But that's okay, because these were like the big stories. Like, obviously, there's a lot of survivors. If you want to read more survival stories, go and look at them, right? But these were just the big ones that stood out to me for different reasons, and this one's my personal favorite. Mm-hmm. I'm going to butcher his last name. I tried to practice it, but I forgot. His name is Charles Joughin.
Joughin?
Joughin? Joughin.
Joughin?
Joughin. We're going to say that. Charles Joughin, and he was the chef on the Titanic. Okay, this is the best story, guys. Buckle your seatbelts. His family's from Ireland. All right, just thought you should know that.
Oh, he's an Irish.
He is. He wasn't born there. I forget where he's born, but he grew up there for a little bit. He survived because he was drunk AF. Like, just knocked out, basically, at this point.
I mean, same.
Right? Like, I would, if I ever am in this situation, I would go for the same approach. I am not a fan of being on a boat, and so I've gone for the same approach. So I get him. So I think Charles and I really vibe. That's where he's coming from.
You vibe with him.
It's honestly the only reason he survived, and they found this is because he had alcohol in his system.
Well, because doesn't it like lower your body temperature or like to withstand colder temps?
And I've noticed that. Like, have you ever drank a bunch and then you walk out in the cold and you can walk for miles and you don't feel it?
When that happens, I'm mostly black out, but...
Exactly, yeah, that's how you know you drink too much. But we're not saying to do that, all right? We're not encouraging that, but it's possible that it has happened before.
Personal experiences.
And sometimes you walk 2 miles and you don't realize it because you've had too much alcohol in your system.
Dude.
All right. Yeah. Anyway, this guy was not only a drunk... Well, I don't know if I want to call him a drunk, because he might not have been a drunk. He was just in a situation, okay? He wasn't an alcoholic, from what I found. He was also a hero, okay? Although, he might be full of alcohol. I keep picking up my wine and not drinking it. I don't get what's wrong with me. Although he was drunk at this time, he was a hero, and he was known for his heroic moves. Okay, do you want to hear what he did?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Tell me more.
So, when he saw that there weren't enough lifeboats... Okay, he's still looking from up above. I don't know exactly where his thing was, but he was noticing that not everybody had a lifeboat, and he was throwing the deck chairs off into the water so people could grab onto those.
Okay.
So that was a way that he was helping out. So I guess he was on the deck. That makes sense if he's throwing them from the deck. But at that time, he's on the deck. And again, he has alcohol in his system. He's like, I'm just here to help out. You know what I'm saying? So he's throwing those chairs off. And he was the last to leave the liner. So
really?
Out of everybody, he was the last to leave. So he was really focused on helping other people.
Yeah.
Again, and again, guys, he was drunk. He drank a whole bottle of brandy.
He's probably just stumbling around, chucking chairs off.
Take the chair, take the chair. Which again, Charles, you're my inspiration. I love it. If I can be a mix of Charles and Molly Brown, I think I'll be good. Anyway, so yeah, he drank a whole bottle of brandy. This guy, okay, I should go in chronological order. I didn't write my notes in chronological order, but I should go. He had his chefs deliver loaves of bread. So he, knew people were probably going to be out in the water for a while, so they were they're going to be hungry. So they were throwing bread off the balconies and giving it to people before they got on lifeboats, just in case they'd be stuck out there for a while. Mm-hmm. So they gave away all of the leftover bread that they had, which I thought was really cool.
Nice.
He was the last survivor to leave the Titanic. I think I already mentioned that. But, again, he survived this whole situation, and he was the last one to step foot off of the Titanic. He swam for 2 hours until someone recognized him and put him on a board. So obviously, since he's one of the last people gone, there's people that have passed him.
Yeah.
And so he, I just imagine him like drunk and just being like, I'm swimming in the water.
I think they did a drunk history on this specific guy, and it was hilarious.
I know, I need to find that.
It was so funny.
But yeah, so yeah, this man was swimming, okay, for his life for 2 hours. 2 hours in the freezing cold water.
Didn't he have a life preserver, though?
I don't know.
I'm sure he did.
I'm sure he did, yeah. So, when he was rescued and everything, the only thing that he had from this whole situation was swollen feet.
Oh my god.
Everything else in his body was perfectly fine, but he had some swollen feet.
This dude's a champ.
I'm telling you, I want to be like Charles. I do.
Yeah.
So that's all they could find wrong with him. And this did not stop him. After this, he ended up surviving another massive sinking.
Oh my god!
So this was only the first one.
Oh my god!
He was on the SS Oregon.
Okay.
It sank in Boston Harbor.
Oh no.
And again, he survived that one. But he eventually, and I think he was in the military at that time, but he died in 1956 in America.
Okay, that's not too bad, because he was probably around like 30 or something.
Yeah, so he lived a full life. I think he died at around 80 years old, 70 years old. Mm-hmm. So he lived a full life with stories to tell. Imagine this guy being my grandfather, like... Oh my goodness.
You're like, I remember the day when I was in the Titanic.
The Titanic.
I was drunk off my ass saving people, throwing deck chairs.
People in Ireland, like, look up to this guy, like, one of their biggest heroes. And again, he's a hero, like, wanting to stay there and help other people, being the last one to leave. I could never make that sacrifice. I'd be like, I need to go with somebody I know.
Yeah.
So I'm very impressed by his decision to do that. But those were those were the big stories. There's obviously more survival stories.
Of course.
I just, honestly was just like, no, we'll just do a few, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to look at more survival stories, definitely do so.
There's so much information that you can, like, you can go to the library, find so many books on it, because it's such a huge topic.
I will say, have you heard about the novel that predicted it?
What?
Yeah. So there is a novel that actually, it kind of predicted it. I mean, it was obviously written in different ways, but it's called The Wreck of the Titan.
Oh.
That's the name of the book. Your cat is out.
No!
We'll come back. And so there's this novel called The Wreck of the Titan. Okay, Titanic, Titan, a little suspicious. I would say, a little sus. Okay. And this book was about a fictional ocean liner that was unsinkable and didn't have enough lifeboats.
Do you know when it was written?
Mm-mm. I knew at some point, I just didn't write it down for some reason.
Do you want me to look it up?
Yeah, sure. So,
what's it called?
The Wreck of the Titan. Okay. If this is fake, guys, sorry. One of the last pieces of research I found, and they seemed like it was real.
1898.
1898. See, so it's before.
Mm-hmm. Dang.
So yeah, basically predicted it. So these were some of the key events, key people involved in the Titanic. But in 1997, the year of our birth, horrible thing happened.
Oh God.
James Cameron decided, let's make a movie.
For the longest time, I really thought the Titanic movie was directed by Steven Spielberg.
I don't blame you. I don't know anything about those people.
Because I honestly thought James Cameron for the longest time was someone entirely different.
Yeah. I feel like if you would have asked me, I probably would have said Steven Spielberg, because I don't know anything.
I'm not good with Hollywood movies.
Yeah, no. Anyway, if you have an opinion on this movie, maybe some people love it.
Oh yeah,
okay? And if you love it,
a lot of people
fine.
do.
That's fine. Do I think it could have taken a different approach? Yes. To focus on a love story where, like, they just met, right? Like, didn't they just meet? I probably should have watched the movie again, but I didn't feel like it.
Well, yeah, because Leonardo DiCaprio, Leo, my homeboy Leo, he he was a third class, I think.
Yep.
And he pretty much just, like, aboard ship, just kind of just hopped on, was like, I'm leaving here.
Was she poor?
No, she was rich.
She was rich.
She was
you're
first
right,
class.
You're right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was why they did it.
Forbidden love.
It's just, they just met. You know, like, there were, just the fact that there's so many stories about the Titanic where, like, people lost their fathers, people lost, like, people that they've loved for years, and they didn't make a movie about that. They chose a random couple that met on the boat, correct?
Yeah.
Met on the ship, knew each other for a day? 2 days? At most.
Around 2 days, yeah.
And that was the story they were focusing on. You know?
It's a cult classic though, because it was one of the highest grossing movies.
Oh yeah, and it still is one of the biggest movies of all time.
Mm-hmm. So like I give it props for that, but as looking at the historical aspect of it, coming from like my perspective, I think it could have been better.
Yeah. I think the details were great. Like, the way that they showed, you know, the panic of people, like, the way they still acted.
Mm-hmm.
But couldn't we have focused more on that and less on, like, this little love story?
But, like, that was huge at the time, though, with romance. And that's why a lot of people, especially females, wanted to go see it, because it was a love story about this iconic ship.
Right. And it's Leo. You can't resist Leo. I get it.
He looked like such a child in that movie, but he was like, what, 18, 19, something like that?
I just think I would have been more convinced if they had been together for longer. I think the part that really throws me off is, like, and I could be wrong, but I think they met on the ship and pursued love as, like, teenagers. Right? Were they teenagers?
They were young.
But yeah, they were young, and like I get it, young love, you know, it's fine. But like I don't know what the true stories that were happening, and maybe there was a story like that out there, but like I just feel like they should have focused more on long-lasting relationships that were lost that day. So,
but then it would have made it more depressing, and people don't want that unless it's like an actual documentary. Yeah.
So anyway, let's talk about the big debate. Okay, could they both have fit on the lifeboat?
Oh my god.
We gotta talk. We cannot make a podcast about the Titanic and not discuss this. Now, I decided to find this answer out for myself. So you know what I did? I watched Mythbusters.
Oh my god. So you didn't watch the Titanic, but you watched the Mythbusters episode?
I watched the scene from Titanic. It was
God.
cringy, and I wanted to physically jump off the Titanic myself.
It was filmed in a pool.
I am not an emotionally driven person. Romance movies, I've always just kind of been like, okay, but let's think of the logical side. Rom-coms are great, because there's more to it than just like, our love will endure forever, right? There's like a story, but like sometimes it's just like, okay, relax. And that's how I feel about this movie. Mythbusters created a lifeboat that was the same size, right? And now I don't know if they created the exact same, but they focused on like the size. That was their big concern.
Yeah.
And they like laid on it together. They realized that it was made for one until, because they were on a board, I think, in the movie, the board. So it wasn't even a lifeboat, so ignore that part. But they were on like a board, and it was made for one, but if you found your balance, they both could have fit. So they actually laid on it for hours just to see like how long they could last.
Oh.
And at first one of them was falling off, but as soon as they like laid a certain way, they could go the rest of the time. So technically, guys, Mythbusters, obviously they're the most accurate source in this world. So if Mythbusters says that it's fake, then it's fake. So you heard it here.
Oh god. I just
not sponsored.
That show was great. We watched that all the time in school.
We had a science teacher that didn't teach us. Just was like, hey, Mythbusters time.
Was that in high school?
Yeah.
Who?
I don't know her name. It was our chemistry class, and we like barely learned chemistry.
Brown hair?
Yep.
I had her.
I figured. We didn't have her at the same time, but we had her. We went to the same high school, by the way.
I don't remember her name. God, I'm terrible with names. I hope you all know. Names are hard.
Okay, so anyway, my opinion on the movie is very debatable. I get it.
But, like, it also kind of informs you, though, of just, like, this is the Titanic. This is what happened. It sank.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, most parts are great.
Yeah.
It's just the, like, never let go, Jack. Never let go. So cringy. It's so cringy.
Those are great. But, so, that is the Titanic.
Yeah.
It is very sad. It's very iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we choose this as our first one, though?
The Titanic isn't one that you have to do multiple episodes on. Like, I feel like we could give you all the information here, and then you can research what you want. Because it happened so fast.
Yeah, it was very quick. It happened in a matter of hours.
Exactly.
And just, there is a lot of research that can still be done with this. Like, they're still doing research. Like, they're going down to the actual ship, but they can't remove it because there's reefs that have just started forming in the ship itself, and that's destroying an ecosystem, which they don't want to do. So, but they're getting so high tech that they're starting to get, like, machines that can just, like, x-ray through it just to see what's in there. Because there's probably a lot. Because when they go down there, because I know that, I think Expedition Unknown did a Titanic episode. I could be wrong. Don't
quote me.
Yeah. But I did watch a show where I can't remember for the life of me what it was called, but they went down to, like, the Titanic and were just looking. There was just objects everywhere still. And of course you're going to get pirates to come and just get them and try to sell them. But at that point it's just like, really, is that necessary?
Yeah.
But it's still...
There's still so much to discover.
There really is, and there's still so much to find about it, just, like, what really happened, like, how these... Granted, all these people probably died of drowning or just, like, freezing to death. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just so fascinating to see this ship that everybody thought that was going to be unsinkable, was going to be the world's greatest ship, go down in a matter of days.
Right.
But that was just bad luck.
Because of an iceberg, like.
Because of an iceberg.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The potential.
Mm-hmm.
The potential.
It really could have had a lot of potential, and it could have retired flawlessly.
Yep.
Or it could have been sunken in any of the wars.
Yeah, but again, guys, wrong time, wrong place. Is that the same?
Wrong place, wrong time.
Oh. Okay, flip those around. Yeah, but anyway, that's the story.
That is the Titanic. Thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah. Now, at the end of our history discussions, we want to give some advice of things we learned from researching this. So
I have one very...
Right. So Jamie's going to give her advice first of what she learned from this experience.
If you go on a cruise ship, look for the lifeboats. Do what I did. Look for those lifeboats because you never know. Stay smart. Stay safe. Stay dry.
Yeah. That's a big one, right? Like, look for the lifeboats. And I'm sure at this point, like, they're less focused on looking great and more focused on safety, you would think. But who knows? I mean, just on a cruise ship.
Just look for the lifeboats in life.
Exactly.
Look for the safety precautions. Look for the lifeboats.
Just in life, look for the lifeboats, or your ship might sink itself.
Oh no, Layla has the zoomies.
Yeah, if you hear zoomies in the background,
sorry. God. Okay, what's your advice?
So, my advice.
Oh my God, she just keeps running.
I gotta let the dogs run real quick. Give us a second. My advice. Hold on. Gotta breathe for a second. Alright, she's breathing. We're good. So, what I learned is sometimes a drink or two might help you survive. And that not only goes with, like, the cold temperatures, but also just life. Like, sometimes you just need a drink.
Dude, after this week, I definitely
exactly.
needed one.
So Charles knew what's up.
Charles, I love you.
He's the real hero of the story.
He's the real hero. Molly Brown and Charles, the iconic duo of the Titanic.
Now, here's the thing, and I know we're done talking about it, but, like, nobody's to blame for this because it's an iceberg.
Right?
Like, and people are still trying to find people to blame. Like, it was the captain's fault. It was this guy's fault. But, like, it's an iceberg. They tried to avoid it. They couldn't. That's just the facts.
You gotta admit, it was 1912, too.
Right.
Like, holy crap. Like, I hate when people try to blame other people. It's like, when it's evident, like, yeah, put the blame on that person.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
But when it comes to stuff like this, it's just like, it's unexpected. You can't, like, we as people try to blame someone else. Yeah. But in this situation, you can't. Everyone handled this situation as best as they could. I think as many people as they could get to safety, they did a pretty good job. Like,
some stories in history, like, it's like, wow, what were they thinking? But this was one where, like, they really were thinking clearly. They really were doing the best they could. So I respect it. Hardcore.
Oh, for sure.
Great story. Right. So, rest in peace, Titanic. You are Miss Girl. All right.
Thank you for joining us on Historia.
Yeah, that was episode 1. We'll be back next week for another story. You'll have to find out what it is.
I'm excited.
Yes, me too. All right.
Bye.
Bye.